Before we talk about how to have bitachon, Shaar HaBitachon forces us to ask a much harder question. What's stopping us from having bitachon? The first obstacle we're discussing today is the ignorance of Hashem's commandments. I want you to understand there are going to be many obstacles in your way of having true bitachon. Many people think that bitachon is optional. It's a nice idea. It's a spiritual extra when you're working on yourself. It's something for people on a much higher level. But Shaar HaBitachon says it's simply not true. Bitachon is not a suggestion. It's not a voluntary mitzvah like tzedakah or chesed. Bitachon is a commandment, just like any other commandment, which means that constant worry and misplaced trust are not just a neutral behavior, neither here or there. They reflect a misunderstanding of what Hashem actually asks of each one of us. The second obstacle is a little bit more subtle that we're going to discuss today. The Shaar HaBitachon says that the closer a person feels to the system of cause and effect, the further they actually are from the true source. To explain this, he brings a parable, an example. Let's say in modern terms, right? A CEO decides whether an employee will be promoted or let go. But the decision, it doesn't come directly. It moves through a process, right? It goes from the CEO to the board, to the regional director, to the department head, the local HR manager, until it actually reaches that employee. Now, if the employee panics over the manager or is afraid of the HR or resents the coworkers around him, but he never actually thinks about the CEO, he actually completely misunderstood the entire reality over here. Shaar HaBitachon says the same is true in our lives. The closer you cling to the messengers of the things that you get, the further you drift from the actual source, which is Hashem. And that's where today's shiur begins. I'm Ravav, and this is Shaar HaBitachon. All right. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us all here today. Today's shiur should be Le'ilu Nishmas, our dear friend Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as my dear aunt Rivka Bas Gavriel Tzvi, and for Zaidi, Reb Shmuel ben Yosef Dov HaKohen, and B'schus l'Refuah Shalema B'karov Mishalom ben Sarachel, and Miriam Bas Sarah. Today, we are on page 394 in the Ora Vigdor, for those who are following along. And today we're continuing to discuss in chapter 7, Perek Shvi over here, we're continuing to discuss the obstacles of bitachon. Now, it's very, very nice. We all, till now, the last couple of months, we built up an understanding of bitachon, how to do it, how to go about it. But just like everything else in life itself throws obstacles in our way. It throws us off course. It throws us off balance. Same thing when it comes to bitachon. The fact that we learned bitachon, the fact that we understand what bitachon is today, all the concepts behind it, all the parables that we learned, all the pesukim that we brought, it doesn't help you anything if you're not aware of these obstacles that Chovos HaLevavos brings to us so that we can have an understanding of what to look out for, and only then can we have a fully integrated bitachon in our system and really, really internalize it and get close to Hashem. Quick pause here for just a moment. If this shiur has helped you strengthen your bitachon and your trust in Hashem, I want to let you know that I've created a Patreon link to help to support the channel if you choose so. All right, now let's get back to our shiur. So today we're going to continue with those obstacles, and the first of the two that we're going to talk about today is ignorance of Hashem's commandments. Now I want you to understand, Hashem gave us a Torah. Hashem gave us commandments. He said you should do this. You should keep Shabbos, put on tefillin, eat kosher, all those different things. One of the commandments that we have is you need to have bitachon in Hashem. Now inside over here he says like this. So mehem siklosai b'mitzvos habari yizbarach. Another obstacle to bitachon is the ignorance of Hashem's commandments. Ritzoni loima. That is, I wish to say, the mitzvahs of his Torah in which he commanded us to rely on him and to trust in him. You need to be aware that Bitachon is an obligation. It's no less obligation than keeping Shabbos and putting on tefillin. It's not a voluntary mitzvah that you get for being a good Jew. It's not something that, something that you aspire to do. Same way you don't aspire to be a Shomer Shabbos. You are a Shomer Shabbos. The same way you don't aspire to put on tefillin. You just put on tefillin. You don't aspire to be a Baal Bitachon. You can't leave and say, this is not for me. These are for the people who are really good at this. Tzaddikim, learned people, very, very special individuals. I'm an average guy. It's not for me. This is not something I can relate to. The pasuk tells us, "V'chanuni no bezois." Test me now this. In the pasuk over there specifically over there, the pasuk was talking about giving meiser, giving 10% of your money away to tzedakah every single week. And Hashem says to test me, give away the meiser, and I'll show you how much goodness I'm going to rain down on you. And that, I think, is the only place in the Torah that Hashem says to an individual, to people, that we should test Hashem. No other place are we allowed to test Hashem. V'nishmatim l'od nafshesechem means you're not allowed to test Hashem. You can't jump in front of a bus, test Hashem to see if you're going to live or not. It doesn't work like that. But over here, where the pasuk talks about testing Hashem, showing Hashem that Hashem is going to provide you with goodness, we learn from there an important lesson. The lesson is that we need to trust Hashem. And when we trust Hashem, Hashem is going to give us back. Not always the way we see it, but understand that it's for your good. But at the end of the day, the most important part over here that he wants us to understand is that you don't have a choice in whether or not you want to be a Baal Bitachon or not. You must be a Baal Bitachon. It is a commandment. It's an order. It's not a requirement. It's not an ask. It's not an extra credit. It's not like, let me go do some chesed. Let me go visit some sick people in the hospital. Let me do some extra credit in that manner. No. It is something that you must do as a Jew. Now, the second obstacle we'll talk about today is the remoteness that we have from an outcome to the actual source. Now let's talk about it inside first, and then we'll talk about it on the outside. Mehem, netoisei ala sibois akrovus is a person's inclination to rely on the immediate cause. Immediate cause meaning, if you went to a bakery to buy a loaf of bread, the immediate cause is you gave the person money, that person gave you the bread, right? So your whole reliance is on the storekeeper or the clerk, whoever works in the bakery, to provide you with that bread. Ashahu roya oisam, which is he sees as the effective cause of an action, right? Really, that's what it is. I went into a store, I gave the person money, the person gave me a loaf of bread, sliced it up, put it into a nice bag for me, and gave it to me. Without that person, I don't have anything. That's the mindset. V'lo without realizing that the immediate causes in general are not the real causes. It's the most distant cause of the actual part that supports that. And there's an example over here that Rabbeinu Bachai gives about the king. And I'm going to give you a more modern example. The modern example is like this. So say the CEO of a company gets word of a certain individual in one of his stores at a certain state that he needs to let go. And so what the CEO does, he sends an email over to one of the board members making up that decision, say, hey, we got to let go of this and this guy. The board member reaches out to the regional director. The regional director reaches out to the store manager. The store manager reaches out to the shift manager, and that shift manager tells the employee, hey, you're fired. You're let go. Now, the employee is like, tells his direct report. He goes, he starts arguing with the guy. He goes, why are you firing me? I'm doing such a good job. But whatever the case is, you know what the problem is with that? We could all see the problem. The problem is that his immediate direct report has nothing to do with this decision. He was just handed down a rule. He was handed down a law. He was handed down something. And he came over to the employee and said, you're fired. It's out of his hands. You can go back and cry to HR. They can't even do anything. You can go back even as far as try to take the board members out to dinner, to a really nice steak dinner. They can't either do anything. You know why? Because at the end of the day, you forgot who actually made that decision. That decision came from the most highest point, the CEO. The same is true over here with the world and how it works. When things don't go well, we tend to blame, or we rely, when things are going good, we rely on a certain aspect. We rely on our abilities to do commerce. We rely on business. We rely on those things in order to make money. But not realizing that the closer you are to the source that actually hands you that dollar, the closer you are to the source that feeds you, that gives you the health, for instance, a doctor, the closer you are to anything, the further you are from the actual real source that supplies that makes that happen, the decision maker. And we know that at the end of the day, if you're a real Baal Bitachon, the intermediary pieces, those are all ways of Hashem to use as a shliach, right? At the end of the day, the shliach is nothing. It's only Hashem that makes it happen. That's what we need to understand over here today. In order to be a Baal Bitachon, in order to be someone who really internalizes Bitachon, we need to be weary of these obstacles that are going to confront us. Because without understanding these obstacles, we can't really internalize true Bitachon in Hashem. So to recap today, ignorance of His commandments. We have to understand that it's not a request, it's a requirement for us to have Bitachon in Hashem. And secondly, understand who really is the one that gives you. Who is the real provider behind everything? If you're going to, get anxiety over the fact that something happened at work or something happened in the house or whatever that is, you had a loss, you had a misfortune of some sort, it doesn't make a difference whether it's money or health, relationship, or children, it doesn't matter what the text is. It doesn't matter what the subject is. At the end of the day, you need to remember who really is the one in charge over here. The CEO, the one who makes all the decisions, who gives it direct to the board members and so on, to all the managers and all that. That's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the one who we need to please every single day. Not take out the board members to steak dinners. Not to try to please everyone else around you in your social circles. And don't think for 1 second, at the end of the day, that you're going to gain anything more from an individual. If not, it's not what Hashem wanted you to have. So don't rely on those people. Don't get anxiety over things when things like that happen. And if you do all those things and you internalize these things, you will get much, much closer with your relationship with Hashem. You wind up losing that anxiety. You wind up having a much easier life with all that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all here today. And as always, I love you all.